Oops. Okay, guys, welcome to week number 3 of Creative Presentation. I was just talking to a couple of you before we started out, and I hit the record button just to see how everyone's feeling. This week we're halfway done. You're at the 50% mark, and a little even beyond that because we're here on Tuesday night. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit better. I love Lord Business. I like to put that picture in there. So of course I'm not asking for total perfection, but I just think that's funny because I've seen the Lego Movie so many times. So I thought I would include that this week. But for week number 3, we are really going to start moving into the production of the Brand Yourself presentation. We're going to take what we did last week in week number 2 with the plans and really start bringing them to life this week and start creating your audio visual presentation. So it's an exciting week. I truly think that this week lets you guys breathe a little bit. Week number 2 is very intense. And I remember telling you guys that last week at the very beginning. It is quite intense with the emotional storytelling assignment as well as the plans. It really asks a lot of you. But again, I said to you, set yourself up for success in weeks 3 and 4 by working hard in week number 2. So I think that hard work is going to start to pay off and you'll really start to see it with week number 3, guys. So let me just do a recap for you of what is expected of you this week. And you'll see that it really does give you a lot of breathing room, especially with the discussion board. I think that's where things start to settle down a little bit this week. So of course, you've got 4 items that you are responsible for completing by the end of this week, which is May 20th, Sunday, May 20th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So of course, if you're either here attending live in the go-to session, welcome everybody that is here live. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend live. But if you're not, if you're attending the recording or watching the recording, just be sure to go back into the platform and check that you have completed this activity. The reading is due by May 20th as well. And then I will go over the 3.3 peer feedback discussion board, as well as a really good, healthy discussion about the first draft of the Brand Yourself presentation. And then for the remainder of the night, we're really going to be talking about visuals. I really like this week. It's very interactive between me and you guys through the chat box, through microphones, if we wanted to include that as well. But really the visual aspect of the presentation is what we're going to be focused primarily on for the majority of the content. And I wanted to show you some things, some great resources that are going to be available to you to really start thinking about how you're going to communicate non-verbally with the visual aspect of your presentation. So that's kind of an agenda for the night. I'll go over the assignments first and then talk about the content last. Might not be a full 2 hours depending upon how interactive you guys are. You're usually a very lively bunch. So we'll see where it brings us. But this is one of the weeks that I really look forward to. It's quite a bit of fun. So let me go through the assignments first. So for the 3.2 learning activity, the Resonate Slideology. So you are responsible for the chapters listed on your screen right now from both Resonate and Slideology. So you'll tackle chapters 5 and 6 from Resonate, and then in Slideology you'll cover chapter 11, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so similar to last week, there's going to be an extra step to get credit for this particular assignment. Plus, I want you to do one more thing in addition to the reading. And this is to watch this very quick video. It actually stars me as the person speaking on behalf of our department with tips for public speaking. So it's a very brief video. I recorded this about a year ago. It really just offers some just best practices and some things that will help you feel more comfortable and confident, hopefully, as you're starting to create the first draft of the Brand Yourself presentation. So take a look at that video as well as the readings. And I just want you to come back into the discussion or the assignment area there once you have finished and discuss the best visual elements and or content you have experienced in a presentation that you've witnessed. What was it that made them so powerful, and did they use any of the techniques discussed so far in the course? Share your thoughts. So that will be the completion for the 3.2 assignment. So be sure you have that done by Sunday, May 20th. All right, super easy with that. This one's also a super easy week when it comes to your discussion board. There isn't going to be like the last 2 weeks in week 1 and week 2 where you had the initial post and you had to do the 2 reply posts as well. So this really is all about sharing your own first draft files if you're comfortable doing it. So if you're not comfortable, I'll give you some alternatives, but this is really for you guys to be able to connect with each other, give each other constructive feedback, to ask questions of your classmates. Maybe you're having struggles with a particular software program, or you wanted some advice about visuals, or you just don't know how to wrap up your presentation very strong. You wanted just some advice and some feedback. So this is a great place to post your first draft so that your peers can see it. Because when you post it for the actual assignment, only I can see it. But if you post it here in the discussion board, this is a great opportunity for you guys to see what each other is doing, and also give and receive peer feedback. Make sure it's constructive feedback. Make sure that it is there to help the classmate or the peer grow and continue to evolve within the first draft. Okay, so no negativity in here whatsoever. Please be sure that you are using, the RISE model when it comes to giving feedback as well. But just be very constructive about the way that you are interacting with your classmates. So if you do feel comfortable sharing your first draft, by all means, guys, share it with your classmates, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of great constructive feedback. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine too, but I do expect everyone to at least make one type of post, whether it's posting your first draft, providing feedback, perhaps providing helpful hints about software. Just add something of value, when it comes to the first draft file, something that could be used to any of your classmates. Okay, so just make one post in there before the deadline of this upcoming Sunday, if you guys would. I've got a private question asking for the 3.2. Can it be any presentation? Yes, back on the 3.2 assignment, that you can be referencing any presentation. Perhaps it's one that you've watched prior to our course, or maybe it's something that you've seen while we've been in the duration of our course. So it can be any presentation to answer that question. Marty, you'll be sharing yours. You want the feedback. It helps. Absolutely. Feedback is extremely valuable. Sometimes we kind of get into this tunnel vision and we don't see what others might be seeing very, very clearly because we just, kind of comes in our brains and we think that it's coming out that way, but you might not be communicating your idea as clearly as you would like to. So definitely, guys, that peer feedback is absolutely vital and essential. Heidi, let me see here. Can we just ask questions as opposed to posting a draft? Yes, you can ask a question, say perhaps something is, tricking you, kind of slipping you up a little bit, and you had a question that you wanted to post. Just add something of value to the discussion board. Please, guys, also remember to visit the discussion board frequently as well, to be interactive with your classmates. This is really, guys, how you continue to maintain those networking bonds, those bonds that will stay with you as you continue to grow. And it's a little bit harder in the online environment, so you have to make that extra effort to continually put in that effort within the discussion boards as well. Coolness from Heidi. Okay, great. Rick, I think I will definitely need all the help I can get. Yeah, we all need all the help we can get, right? We're trying to do this amazing brand yourself presentation, and we're at the second phase. We're at the middle point right now, and that's where we should be. We should be at a point where we're about to, create the first draft of the audio visual portion of this, but there's yet room to grow as well. So you'll be getting my feedback as well as your peers' feedback. Let me just check through a couple more chat questions. James, you had trouble with Spark last week, but I think you got it for the future. Okay, that's my one thing about Spark, is that it's a fantastic program. However, the people over at FSO Support aren't necessarily able to walk you through or troubleshoot or do any kind of tech support for Adobe Spark. So if there is something happening with that, it would be Adobe that would be kind of helping you on the technology side as opposed to FSO Support. But for the majority of the time, that's why I encourage students to use it. It's very user-friendly, and it should really kind of guide you right through the entire process. Let's see. Also, another note about Adobe Spark. So for a lot of you guys, you've used it for the week 1 and week 2 assignments, the TED Talk assignment and the planning a presentation assignment. And more than likely you used the Pages option, which looks more like a website, if you will. Adobe Spark also offers a video option. And for the first draft, which we'll talk about in a moment, the first draft should be used with the video option for Adobe Spark if you're using that software program, because it does enable you to include the audio file within the presentation, and audio is required for the first draft. So I wanted to just make that note about Adobe Spark. Patrick, okay, when we do the rough draft, scroll up for a second, are we doing visual and or audio? So yes, Patrick, I'm about to go over that entire assignment, but the answer to that is yes, it will require both audio and visuals for the first draft, and I'll go into detail about that. Jason, let me just read your comment here. Hold on one second. Oh, you've had severe storms in your area, hail and high winds. That's awful. Yeah, Jason, so if something happens and you get disconnected, of course, you can always watch the recording. That goes for anyone if you have to pop in late or pop out early, disconnections happen. The recording will be available to you guys by tomorrow morning. All right, so you guys are just talking a little bit about, okay, all right, good. So I think I've answered all the questions. All right, so back to the 3.3 feedback discussion board. So just be sure you've completed that by Sunday. Again, only one post is required. So that's kind of a weight off your shoulders tonight. You don't have to do the initial post and 2 reply posts like we've done in weeks 1 and 2. So it's a little lighter of a workload, especially when it comes to the discussion boards. Interact with each other, guys. It's really kind of your area to connect and communicate with each other and give each other constructive feedback. Hey, Willie, welcome to the live session. Thank you for saying hello. All right, guys, so I'm going to take some time to talk to you guys about the main assignment for this week, which is, of course, the 3.4 Brand Yourself presentation first draft. So we're really kind of taking the step from taking the plans and making it come to life this week in week number 3 for the first draft. So we're going to take those plans, and I'm working on the feedback. I will tell you guys this. I have one section of my 3 completely done. I've started in the second section today. The plans usually are the hardest and longest for me to grade because I'm trying to give you as much personalized direction and feedback moving into the first draft. So my grading deadline is the end of day on Thursday. So be patient with me, if you will. Everyone is going to be getting feedback. So everyone that turned it in on time last Sunday will receive their planning grade as soon as I can get them to you. I leave the emotional storytelling grading to the end of the week because I know you're waiting on the feedback for the plan. So if you haven't gotten it yet, I am getting it to you. So it's coming. So I promise you it will be there. Just please be patient with me. All right. So last week in week number 2, you drafted that detailed plan talking about your audience and your big idea, and you started to create a presentation flow and then also identified your star moment. Okay, so that was a written assignment. So what we're going to concentrate on this week is really starting to build your audio visual production of the first draft. Okay, so how do we do that? We want to be sure, again, and this is for any of you guys, if you've received feedback or not, you need to be sure that you have your audience in mind, that you're very clear about your audience. And I will say that we've talked about the audience as the hero since week number 1. Definitely looking for you guys to be very clear about your target audience. I do get the question month after month after month. Well, I'm not wanting to be an employee. I want to own my own business, okay? And that's absolutely a viable question. But in either instance, if you wanted to go on the employee or employer route or the entrepreneur route, you still must identify your target audience. Your audience needs to feel like you've built this whole entire presentation to speak directly to them. So it's a little bit harder if you're going the entrepreneur route because that tends to be a very broad audience, but you need to narrow as best you can. Ask questions about that. One that comes up quite a bit is that people want to work with artists. They want to have their own, label. They want to have their own production company, whatever that is going to be. And they want to talk to all the artists in the entire world. That's so broad. And you have to start asking questions about who is it that you want to talk to, right? Who is your ideal client that you could see yourself working with in the future? Okay, and start to ask questions. The ones I give the advice to with working with artists, is it an up and comer, or is this someone that's more seasoned? And you might say, you know what? No, I don't want to work with the seasoned artists. I want to work with the ones that are up and coming and be that mentor and model for them and work them through the industry and guide them. Okay, so that's great. You've really started to narrow that down. What genre of music are you looking into? What does your ideal client look like, feel like, all of those things? What are you two bringing to the table to work together collaboratively? So think about those questions, especially if you're going that entrepreneur route. That audience still has to be pretty darn clear in the plans, in the first draft, and then also in the final draft as well. So I wanted to clarify that and talk about that a little bit. So as a reminder, we are now working on the first draft of the Brand Yourself presentation, where you're pitching yourself to a company or a client that you would like to work with in the future. And so you're going to talk about connecting with your audience. You're going to talk about what it is that you plan to bring to the table with your skills, your knowledge, your education, your experiences, and then you're going to give them a call to action. And this first draft will be an audio visual production. Okay, so those two things need to be running together at the same time. And I'm going to ask you to aim for about 3 to 4 minutes with this one. This assignment, the first draft, is 15% of your grade. It's definitely one, again, these assignments build upon each other. It's one that you don't want to put off and not complete. It's an important assignment here. Okay, so some particulars about this assignment that I wanted to talk about. So we've completed phase 1 with the plans. We're working on phase 2 with the creation of the first draft. Okay, as I've mentioned, it should have audio and visual elements. So in the first draft, I do ask that you submit it in a autoplay or push to play format. What does that mean? Say, for instance, if you're using PowerPoint or you're using Keynote and you've imported your audio file within the PowerPoint or the Keynote presentation, I shouldn't manually have to click on each of your slides. I should be able to put it in presentation mode and the slides run together in the right, timing and the right order, along with the verbal delivery, with you talking, with your script. So I shouldn't have to piece together which visual goes with this portion of the audio. It should all run together. One of the great things about Spark is that it really just pulls it all together for you at the end. You don't really have to do those extra steps like you sometimes have to do with Keynote or PowerPoint. So that's just one of those additional ways or additional reasons why I mentioned Spark to you guys. So for the first draft, I would like you to aim for 3 to 4 minutes, okay? Timing is not necessarily going to be a major issue with the first draft, but I want to set you guys up for success for the final draft, and there is a time constraint for the final draft, and the time constraint is 3 to 4 minutes, okay? So get to that time parameter as closely as you can. I won't look at it, with huge, magnifiers this week, but in week number 4, I do have a timer set up and timing will count against you with points. So I want to get you guys to that range as best as possible. So, if you've got a 10-minute first draft, unfortunately, that means you've got a lot of content to edit. If you've only got a minute, you've got a ton of content to build into this presentation. James is saying 3 minutes and 32 seconds. Perfection, James. That's exactly where you want to be, right in that sweet spot between 3 to 4 minutes, okay? And sometimes you might need a little wiggle room because you're between the first draft and the final draft. Changes are required. You cannot just submit the first draft twice and expect to receive credit. Changes are required. So you might want to leave yourself, 28 seconds of wiggle room in there so you can start to maneuver or, add or subtract a little bit of content based on the feedback that I give you and perhaps that your peers also give you as well. So the first draft is due this upcoming Sunday, all right? And we talked a little bit about late work. So guys, as we're approaching towards the end of the course here, definitely need to be in a great habit of turning your assignments in on time. So I do expect to have these turned in by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. If there's something that comes up, you need to get with me early in the week. If you foresee something happening, chat with me. We can work together on a one-on-one basis, but you need to be turning your work in on time. Let's see. Samuel is asking, what if the first draft is great? That's amazing. And then more than likely, if you go full out, if you guys go full out and put your best effort into the first draft, you might have only little minor tweaks and revisions, which are acceptable, okay? It might be just a little thing here, switch this visual out, maybe do this instead, have a little bit more solid call to action at the end, something like that. Super easy to fix, and that's a great place to be. More than likely, it's going to be a couple of shifts and revisions, and that's what a first draft is all about, just kind of getting everything out there and then understanding that it's going to be a working document that you're still changing. I will say this. I'm not just talking to you, Samuel, everybody. I have had students where they really have just blown me away with the first draft, okay? And I have said to them, listen, I'm very, very happy with what you have. I don't have major changes. More than likely, they're nitpicky things that I'm mentioning. And if I specifically say you may turn this in, once again, as your final draft. It is a very, very rare instance, but I will have that specific statement to you within the feedback if that is something that you're able to do. And a lot of times first drafts are great, but there's always room for improvement. There's always room to kind of take a look at it from another perspective, from another set of eyeballs and say, okay, I could do this. This might really tweak it and make it even better. All right. Marty, is IKR, I know, right? Is that... Don't laugh, but is that correct? IKR that you just put in the chat box? Does that mean I know, right? Thank God. Okay. All right. Wonderful. I'm older than y'all. Okay. So that's about the gist of the first draft. So I have a couple of things that I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about. Just some frequently asked questions, and then I have a little bit of a checklist to go over with you as well. All right, so here's the frequently asked questions that come up. Do you have to use PowerPoint or Keynote? No, absolutely not. Patrick, that's funny. Do I have to use PowerPoint or Keynote? No, but they are fantastic programs built for creating presentations. They're wonderful programs, but they are not your only options, okay? So as I've mentioned before, you have Adobe Spark. I have students that have created videos. Brandon is saying Final Cut Pro. So anything that works to provide audio and visuals, I am okay with. I just want to be sure that you're able to present it in a way that's an autoplay format, okay? Some students have used... what's it called? Powtoon. Has any of you guys heard of Powtoon? It's more of those sketchy animations. That's the kind of style of Powtoon. I'm not the biggest fan of it. A lot of times it's glitchy, but I have seen students that use it. It's perfectly acceptable. It's just not one that I would necessarily recommend. I think it would probably give a lot of you guys headaches if you're not used to using these programs. But if it's something that appeals to you, look into that. Another one would be Prezi. Prezi is, again, not another one of my big time favorites, but I have seen students use it with success as well. So to answer that question, do you have to use PowerPoint or Keynote? Absolutely not. So you want... Who has said that? Somebody's saying, I want my lunchbox. Tiffany, I want my lunchbox. I know, guys, if I could send you all your lunchboxes tonight, I would. But I am unable to do that. So until then, we're going to work with the best that we have. Trevor, you're asking, how do you put it into the slide, meaning the audio file? Show format with my voice behind it. There's quite a few very just simple Google searches, and I think another one of my CRP coworkers has a playlist that I will share with you guys in my follow-up message tomorrow. It's a YouTube playlist of ways to kind of go through all of the different programs and how to include audio, so I will share that with you guys tomorrow. But again, we don't really teach the technology and how to do that with all of these different options. It's more about the concepts of our class here. So, but I will share that playlist tomorrow. All right, moving down the list. Do I need audio, narration, and visuals in your first draft? Okay. Yes, you must have audio and visuals for the first draft and the final draft. A big mistake that comes up is that students will submit to me a script that's been typed out. along, or they might include their entire script typed out on their PowerPoint slides, which is a big thing to avoid. Okay, so I don't want to see your scripts. I want to hear you deliver your presentation using all of those great vocal tools that we talked about in week 2. So I'm expecting you guys to use the HAIL method and the items in the vocal toolbox and deliver a dynamic, enthusiastic presentation. Include the audio and include the visuals. All right, number 3, what if I don't have a microphone on my computer or a laptop? So I'm not sure if this has been an issue for anyone at this point. I haven't had anyone specifically reach out to me about microphones or not having audio as an option. So if you don't have a microphone or the ability to record audio, it's something that you definitely need to get put together, okay? Because you will be using it not only for this class, but in coming months as well. So you do need to have the ability to record your voice. Okay, number 4, where can I find non-copyrighted images to use in my presentation? I'm actually going to show you just a quick tutorial on the website compfight.com to show you how to do some searches for non-copyrighted images to include with your presentation. There's also some additional resources like Pexels, Flickr, Creative Commons. All of those items are available to you. Okay, so I want to get you away from just doing a quick Google Images search. Getting away from using images with watermarks. That's a clear copyright violation right there. But I want to steer you in a direction and show you where you can find those. Last on the list, where can I find non-copyrighted music to use in your presentation? All right, so music. I love when my students include background music. I think that's wonderful. I will say that be careful with it because you don't want to use music that is too loud or the volume is too loud and overpowering to your own voice. And you don't want to use music with lyrics because they're in direct competition with your own voice. And you don't want to cause distortion or disruption to the audience that is trying to absorb your message. Okay, so that's something to remember about music. But you do have the WeStar Music database offered to you guys through the Full Sail library. Okay, so music is definitely an option if you would like to include that. Marty is saying you used music for your last assignment. Yeah, I start to see that happening, especially with the emotional storytelling assignment. A lot of students include, especially if they're talking about a song, they'll include that as the background music. But definitely you want to be sure you're not violating any copyright issues. Always cite your sources as well. You want to give credit where credit is due, guys. Okay, so those are some frequently asked questions. All right, so this is just a little checklist that I have. Oh, wait, here I have one question. If it involves something you can use screenshots of, like your game from World of Warcraft, when my audience is Blizzard, which owns the game, I would still say at the end, everything that you guys are doing and creating, especially in your time at Full Sail, is going to require you to provide a resources page. Once you get into English composition, they're very particular about how this is done, but we haven't got to that point yet. But we do expect either a final slide showing your resources or a separate Word document showing your resources. Oftentimes it's just, screenshot of World of Warcraft, something like that, just showing that you're giving credit where credit is due. Jason, hopefully that answered your question with that. So back to the slide that's up here. This is two kind of parts, if you will. So this is the presentation plan to first draft checklist that I kind of just work you guys through so you can take it from a written document all the way to a moving, breathing, visual and verbal document that you're creating now. All right, so first and foremost, again, guys, target and connect with your audience. I am really looking for you guys to introduce yourselves. Number 1, I would really prefer if you said your first and last name very early in the presentation. After that, my suggestion is definitely say your audience's name or the general direction that you're going in for the audience. Just be sure that I know, as the person grading it and as an audience member, exactly who it is that you are talking to. And that should come early in the presentation. Sometimes I do see students wait until the very end to either introduce themselves or say who their audience is. And I often suggest with my feedback, please go and make a huge shift in the content here to identify with them early. Next, I want you to be sure that you have a very structured and organized message. This is a short presentation. It's only 3 to 4 minutes, but your audience needs to have a well-organized message that they are absorbing, okay? It needs to have a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And you guys created that presentation flow last week. That was the start or the beginning to the script that you are writing, okay? So beginning is all about your why, your connection to the audience, your purpose. Why are you here? The middle is all about your qualifications, showing the audience how you are uniquely qualified and what it is that you can bring to the table. At the end, you want to talk about what, or explain to the audience what you want them to do next. That is your call to action. It needs to be explicit and it needs to be clear what you want your audience to do next, okay? So that's going to be the structured beginning, middle, and the end. And I've got a couple of questions here that I want to address from you guys in the chat box. So let me see. James is saying, okay, so be like, hello, Mrs. Heaney and company, I'm so-and-so. James, no, so let me clarify that because I probably did just confuse that saying that I was an audience member. I would say leave me out of it. I'm the one grading it. Obviously, you're not submitting this to the company, but I'm grading the assignment. But I want you to address your audience, which would be the company or client that you plan to work with in the future. So you don't have to address me, but I would like you to introduce yourself and then, creatively in some way identify with the company. If you wanted to identify them by name, hello, Blizzard Entertainment, I'm Kristen Heaney. I'd love to have it a couple minutes of your time, something like that. Just be sure that they know who is talking to them and who the audience is as well. All right, let me see. There's a couple more questions. Samuel, okay, great. You put that in there and answered that question. Marty, you're saying you want to submit yours to them. Go for it. Do it. Lisa, you had trouble with the ending. I just want to blurt out, I want you to hire me / work with me in all caps. Lisa, that's funny. Really, okay, so here's my advice about the call to action. More than likely, it's going to be a request from you. You want to end the presentation on a high note, but you also want to put the ball in their court, okay? So more than likely, you're asking them to do something as a result of seeing your video. And that's probably going to be a request to connect with you further, invite you to come in for an interview, for a meeting with you of some sort. So you tell them that, I can't wait to hear from you. Please contact me at the information or the numbers you see on the screen. And I'm looking forward to meeting with you soon. Something like that, showing them, hey, this is what I'm expecting you to do next, to be very explicit about that. I don't know if you necessarily need to be like, hire me, work with me now. But you do need to be explicit about what you would like them to do next. And I think that's probably a good generalized advice. It's going to be different for everybody, but that's oftentimes what I kind of steer you in the direction of doing. Tiffany, you're saying, can you do a live presentation where and then it cuts off, Tiffany. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Can you do a live presentation? Are you wanting to do one like in a go-to session, Tiffany? Okay, no. Okay, Tiffany, type me the question again. Reading one more question. Sorry, one moment, guys. Man, I'm amazing. Oh, James, I'm sorry to hear that you lost the ending to your presentation, but hopefully it will come back in there. Tiffany, okay. All right. So Tiffany's asking a good question. Can you do a live presentation, for instance, a video of herself? Okay. So let me clarify that. So you guys need to include audio and visuals, okay? Oftentimes I see students that are speaking, but not necessarily appearing on camera. You are not required to appear on camera. You are required to have a vocal delivery, but the visuals can be images, short video clips where you don't have to appear in the video. If you want to, Samuel's saying, thank God. If you want to, go for it, guys. If you want to appear on camera, Do it. Push yourself even farther and farther out of your comfort zone, because a lot of people have a very hard time with that step. If you're comfortable with it, do it. If you don't, that's okay. But here's a couple of things to remember. Okay, I'm not necessarily, if you choose to be on camera, not necessarily grading all the nonverbal communication that would necessarily, that would probably come up in a live speech class if I was to compare it to that. But you do need to remember that you're bringing that dynamic to a whole new level. So my expectation would be that you're making effective eye contact with the camera. You're keeping the camera steady. It's at an eye level. You're not like walking around and you're like, the camera's like looking up your nose the entire time. Like, you really need to think about this as a professional presentation. If you're in your room and I can see like all of your dirty laundry piled up on your bed and things like just falling out of your closet and all of this stuff, like, those things start to really kind of take a role in your presentation. Okay, so again, if you are putting, no, James, I'm not watching you right now. If you are putting yourself on camera, clean your room, as Willie said. I feel like your mother right now, but clean your room, right? Have a professional, very streamlined background that is clutter-free, that is consistent with the professional persona that you're trying to present. Okay, guys? So brush your hair, clean your room, look at the camera. I'm sorry if I'm taking on my mom role right now, but you don't have to. Thank you for Happy Mommy's Day. Thank you, Willie. You don't have to appear on camera, but if you do, think about those things. I'm not necessarily grading them, but they do come into play. Just wanting to let you guys know that, and that probably would be feedback that I would offer to you guys if I do see some of those items in the first drafts. Just wanting to let you know. Samuel, I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just telling you how to get a better grade. That's all. All right, so going back to my checklist. Okay, all right, so guys, let's move on to the next slide here. All right, all right, so once you got your presentation plans put together, you've gotten my feedback, really start to write out your script, okay? This is taking it from week number 2 to week number 3, taking it into an audio visual presentation. Write your script out, okay? So this is going to stem from the presentation flow that you wrote for the presentation plans, okay? So as you're writing your script, you need to have it sound like a conversation. It needs to be conversational in nature, with transitions moving throughout, from the beginning to the middle to the end, and making sure that it sounds like you're just having a very natural, conversation, with your audience. Once you have the script written, you need to recite it out loud. The only way to figure out how long your presentation will last is if you start to verbalize the written script, because reading it and saying it will take 2 different amounts of time. So you need to take that time and energy to practice and time out your script. 3 to 4 minutes. 3 to 4 minutes is the timing for this, as close as you can get it, guys. So once you've got your script in order, you have what you want to say, you have the content nailed down. Now it's time to start looking into the visual aspect of the presentation. So you want to really get what you're going to say first, because the images should be there to complement and enhance the verbal presentation. Don't build the visual presentation first and then maneuver your content around it, okay? The content should be what's solid and coming first, and then you should build your visuals around that. All right, so then you need to start creating the slideshow, start creating the video, whatever it is that you choose to do, and then record your audio and make sure that it's timed appropriately with the visuals as well. Okay, guys, so that's kind of how you take it from the written document into the first draft form. Here's a couple of things that I want you to remember, things that I see month after month after month that I want you to avoid, and just items that I want you to keep in mind. Okay, so first and foremost, make sure that you're speaking to your audience, okay? You're not talking about your audience. You're not giving me an informative speech about the background and history of your audience. You're talking directly to them. You did this research about your audience so that you can find connection points and ways to just find a bond and a connection with your audience. I don't want to report about the audience, okay? Next, remember you're branding yourself. This is a brand yourself presentation. It's okay to introduce new ideas that you want to pitch to your client, but the majority of your information should really be about yourself and your skills and your education and the qualities that you bring to the table. Not all about this wonderful imaginative game that you have. I mean, that could be a portion of it, but really, what is it about you that sets you apart and makes you unique and would make you an asset to this company or to this client, okay? Lastly, keep it positive. I can't tell you how many times students will do a presentation all about what their potential audience or their company or their client is doing wrong and how they're just going to come right in there and save the day with all their great ideas. That's not the best first impression that you want to make, is by telling them all of the things that they're terrible at, right? Maybe you do see some flaws within the company, and that's something you would want to bring up later, but not in a quick 3 to 4 minute pitch presentation, okay? So definitely, guys, keep this presentation positive, energetic, and enthusiastic as you're talking with your company, to your company, excuse me. All right, so how do you turn it in? Same as what we've been doing all month long. So you want to either upload a file, if it's a PowerPoint or a Keynote, or you want to get me the link to your presentation, okay? So it needs to be self-running or automatically playing in that particular format, okay? So if it's a movie file, if it's something you create on YouTube, or it's something that you did in Adobe Spark, you're going to have a link. You cannot drag and drop the link into the assignment submission area, okay? Instead, you need to create that Word document, put your name, and the link to your assignment, and upload that into the platform. I will then follow the link to grade your assignment. If it's PowerPoint, if it's Keynote, just drag and drop it and you'll have the file uploaded into the platform, okay? So be sure, guys, I want to give you a word of caution, a word of warning. Don't wait till 11:59 p.m. to upload this. This is going to be a larger file if it's something you're uploading. If it's something you're uploading to YouTube, it's going to be a larger file. And as students are working through their months at Full Sail, their files are getting larger and larger. So upload times are going to be slower and slower. It's just the way it is with Full Sail. So please try not to wait until the last minute, okay? All right, there's some activity in the chat box. Lisa is saying that Sam, Sam, I'm crying. So let me find out what Sam has written here to make everyone cry. Okay, is it Sammy or Samuel? Samuel, what did I do? All right, I'm looking through the chat box. Oh, Sammy, okay. You guys are just chatting together. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions that I should address. 1 second. Okay, Samuel, so no negatives. Gosh, you guys keep typing and it keeps bumping me down. Stop typing for 1 minute. Okay. One second, guys. Okay, Samuel, you said, so no negatives, or just put them later in the video. Samuel, I would say, really, unless it's an absolute key piece of your content that's taking on a negative connotation or highlighting something that the company or the client is doing poorly, I don't think that for this particular assignment, there's a place for that, unless it's absolutely positively vital that must be in there. So that's my advice. I think that for this presentation, it's all about highlighting who you are and what you bring to the table and how well you connect with the audience. Okay, I'm just reading the chat box. 1 more second. Okay, Sammy, what if we don't have an exact company we want to work for, like if we're geared towards freelancing? So Sammy, I mentioned that a little bit ago towards the beginning of our time tonight. It's a little bit tougher for you when you are freelancing, you want to be an entrepreneur, to nail down an audience. It really is more challenging than saying, hey, I want to work for ESPN, or hey, I want to work for Blizzard. It's a little bit more challenging. But at the same time, you wouldn't want to go into a presentation with, a particular artist or, a particular client that you're working with and have it just so broad and vague that it's like, did you even make this for me? Did you even consider me as your audience when creating that? So as I talked about earlier in the session, really start to try to narrow who is that client? What is your ideal client? What do they bring to the table for you? And what do you bring to the table for them? And as I'm starting to kind of look at your presentation planning assignment, feedback is coming in. I try to give you a little bit more advice about that as well. So I'm not sure if you've gotten your feedback. David, can we do a TED Talk vibe? Absolutely do a TED Talk vibe. That's why we kind of introduced that to you in week number 1. So yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to do that kind of style, you can absolutely do that. Thank you for that question. Okay, James, you're saying, should I give Capcom my idea for a game I want to create with them? James, I think that's fine if that's a portion of your content. But again, as I mentioned, this is really about your brand, who you are as a professional in your industry and what it is that you bring to the table. Absolutely tell them that you have this wonderful idea. But what tends to happen is the entire presentation is all about the game and not about you as an industry professional. So I just want the focus to be primarily on who you are, what is your brand, what is your professional persona, and maybe you can incorporate that as well. All right, guys, so this is a good stopping place for additional questions. Do you have any additional questions or anything that I haven't addressed at this point? This is about the first draft. Patrick, you don't really know at this point what your brand is. So Patrick asked, how do you know what your brand is? And that's a good question. So we started talking about branding last week. And really, guys, this is at the very, very tip of the iceberg of the creation of your brand. And your brand is something that evolves and changes and shifts as you change, evolve, and shift as an industry professional. But really, it's about your reputation, okay? Who are you? What is your professional persona? What words come to mind when someone says, hey, we want Patrick to work on this project? Because Patrick is always, insert all of these different adjectives: reliable, dependable, creative, innovative, those types of things. And then you want your own brand to reflect those items in the way that you speak and the work that you create and who you are showing up to job after job after job. So that is what your brand is starting to merge into. It's obviously not something that you complete overnight, but it is all about who you are as a professional, your reputation in your industry. Rick, you're saying if you bomb on the first draft on the 2.4, is there a chance to repair it to keep our grade up? So Rick, you're talking about the first draft and the 2.4. Those are two different assignments. So more than likely I don't think anyone has bombed unless they didn't turn it in. More than likely you didn't bomb the 2.4. So just you're probably being fine, and we can always chat about things. If something is major coming up, I can always try to just kind of get you back on the right track and see what we can do about making sure that you're understanding the assignment. But I don't think there's any problems at this point, unless someone has just absolutely not even turned the assignment in. There's not much I can do about that. So you're saying, oops, I just like seeing from both an optimist and pessimist. I think for me, if I'm seeing you guys, put your best effort forth as best you can. You're reaching out to me, you're asking me questions, you're understanding the assignment. I'll be working with you. It's students that just kind of disappear into the abyss. There's not much I can do. You guys have to show up for your own education. You have to be the ones making this happen. There's not much I can do for students like that. But if you're trying and you're working and you're turning in your assignments, I'm willing to help you as best I possibly can. So hopefully that answers your question. Patrick, let me see what you say here. So if I can say, like, I want Patrick on this job because he's never late, gives 120%, so forth. Yeah, that's the start to your brand, Patrick, and to everyone else. It's who you are as an industry professional. So all of a sudden you want to, make this brand yourself presentation. Well, you want that presentation to communicate those ideas as well, that you're not late, that you put 120% into this particular presentation. What do you intend to bring to the table with an employer or a client in the future? Okay, so that's kind of what to start to think about for your own brand. It will continue to evolve over time. It's just the very, very beginnings of it. All right, guys, I'm going to show you one last piece here. This is the grading rubric for the first draft assignment. So as you can see, it's not very detailed, and like the other ones have been thus far. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's a first draft, and there's a lot of leeway, if you want to put it that way, with this assignment. Okay, so it's really kind of a 100 points for exemplary, 85 points for accomplished, and then 65 points for beginning, or a 0 for no credit because you didn't turn it in. Okay, so I'm looking at 3 different areas when I'm grading the first draft. I'm looking at your content. Is it well organized? Does it have the clear beginning, the middle, and the end? Is your audience clearly identified and appropriate for the topic? Okay, that's the exemplary category. If those things are all there, boom, check. All right, visuals. The visual components reflect the best practices that I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes, and the slides are supporting and enhancing the main points of the presentation. Okay, so I want you to take those best practices that I'll talk about for the next hour and incorporate those into your presentation. Lastly is the delivery, and this is the verbal delivery. Is it clear with ideas communicated effectively? Are you bringing in those items from the Hale method and the vocal toolbox as well? If you've done all those things, that qualifies you to have a 100. Does that mean that it's perfect and you don't need to make any changes? No. It means that you have satisfied the elements of the grading rubric, okay? I've told you guys I'm not the harshest grader, but I'm not the easiest grader as well. It takes a lot for me to assign a 100 on the first draft. Okay, so if, oftentimes it might be, there's still a couple of things missing. Oftentimes it's going to be at the end with the call to action that wasn't as clear as I'd like it to be. But I just want to clarify that if you do receive a 100 on the first draft, it does not mean that nothing needs to be done. When you receive your grade for the first draft, I will accompany the grade with an audio file of me talking to you, giving you feedback. Okay, so you're going to hear me talking like I'm doing right now and giving you my personalized feedback. So listen to the feedback because I am expecting you to take that feedback and implement that for the final draft. Tiffany, thank you for that message. That's nice. So guys, you'll see down here this adjustments area, okay? This lets me add a little points, take away a little points. Like say for instance, you guys turned in a presentation that was just a slideshow, like 2 or 3 slides, not a lot of content, you had some visuals, and you definitely didn't have any audio, okay? It's gonna be a 65, but I might, your visuals did an okay job. Okay, I might be able to adjust it 2 or 3 points, all right? If it's not necessarily an 85, it's more like a 90, I can make these adjustments down here. So I have a little bit of wiggle room that I don't always have with my other rubrics, but you will see, don't worry too much about the grade. Listen to my feedback is what I'm trying to impart upon you. Is just listen to what I'm saying and try to take that advice and implement it for the final draft. Okay, so that's what that's for. And you'll start to see that trickle in next week. So that's the grading rubric. Please, guys, make sure you turn at least something in, okay? I don't want to have to assign zeros. It's painful for me, just like it is for you. I hate doing it. But be sure you turn in something for the first draft. All right, so if you're still struggling with production, again, I'm going to send you that YouTube playlist that one of my fellow CRP instructors created. I'll share that with you guys. So if you're still struggling with production, remember that FSO support is available to you guys, okay? I would suggest calling as opposed to emailing. You'll get an answer quicker, but they are available to you and give you guys a lot of technical support that I am just unable to give oftentimes. So call them. They're a great resource to you guys. All right, so that's my discussion about the first draft. Are there any questions before I move on? Trevor, you're asking, so PowerPoint has recording. Yes, you can record directly into PowerPoint. Someone has snacks, apparently. I don't know who it is, but someone has snacks. The discussion in the chat box is about James has snacks and he's not sharing. Okay. Are there any questions about the first draft? Willie, you do have questions, but you'll ask after. That's fine. I will stay in the room for a little bit afterwards as well. Sammy, can you do a highlight reel? Sammy, are you talking about maybe just a highlight reel of some of the work you've created thus far? I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm glad that you brought this up, Sammy. So if you guys, some of you have a lot of items that you have created so far, that's a wonderful way to include visuals, especially if it's artwork, to really include those as some of your visuals throughout the presentation. If it's more of a video, like you said, a highlight reel, that's something that you can include as well. But be sure, guys, I'm looking for you to be speaking for 3 to 4 minutes. So say if you'd only talked for about a minute and then you had a 2 to 3 minute highlight reel, that's not going to fulfill the requirement. The 3 to 4 minutes for the majority of the time needs to be you verbally communicating your message. So I don't want that to cut into too much of your content time. Hopefully that answers your question, Sammy. Okay, any other questions before I move into the visuals? Samuel, okay, do we make it like a, hey, this is who I am, or can it be like, and boy, a bit cinematic? Oh, okay, I see. Creativity, I love the creativity. It should be professional, yes, but your creativity should really shine through in this assignment as well. And that's what the first draft is for. If I see it and I say, hey, you might need to pull it back just a little bit, I'll let you know. I'll let you know for sure on a case-by-case individual basis. So just, kind of use your boundaries and your caution, just making sure that it is professional, but your creativity should absolutely shine through as well. All right, Tiffany, I didn't break down last week. Think I'm getting better with time, understanding from, okay, Tiffany, that's great. That's great progress. I did not get any any wonderful messages from you last week. I think that one was just my all-time favorite. Tiffany sent me a note saying about to die. To Tiffany. Hopefully I didn't call you out and say that too. I just thought it was cute. But I think a lot of us at some point feel like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? It's cool. You get overwhelmed, and it's going to happen. And you guys are just at the very beginning, and these courses are going to get very complicated and tough, but stick with it. You don't have to be perfect at every single thing. But you're plowing through it. A lot of people quit by now. I've lost, every month I lose several students because it's just not something that they can fit into their time, complete whatever the reasoning is, but keep plowing through, keep working. James is saying you've earned yourself a gummy soda. You guys are cracking me up. All right, so let's talk about visuals. Okay, so I'm sure that y'all have heard this a million times, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I want you guys this week to really start thinking about how to incorporate visuals in a way that really just maintains a solid connection with your audience, okay? And there's things that I'll tell you that I'm looking for you to do, and maybe shift your attention and energy into this direction, because a lot of us do these similar mistakes that I'll bring up time after time after time. And so I'm trying to get you to think about it in a different way. Always, always have the audience in your mind, keeping it from their perspective. What do you think that they would want to see visually as you're speaking? Don't make it all about you and what you want them, what you want to show. What would they like to see to enhance your message? Okay, so a picture is definitely worth 1,000 words. So one of the very first things that I want you to avoid is putting a bunch of words on a slide and calling it a visual presentation. It's not. It's just putting a bunch of words on a slide. So we need to be creative about the way that we're visually communicating with the audience. I'm going to take you through a couple of things that I want you to think about, and I want you guys interacting with me as much as possible. Interacting with me as much as possible in the chat box tonight. I'll try and keep up with it. Like I've told you guys, you're a lively bunch, so sometimes comments just fly right through that tiny little box on the screen. But I want you connecting with me and each other through the chat box tonight, okay? I think Rick said a photoshopped image of them swimming in money. Yes, that's always the winner. It's the photoshopped image. Okay, so here is a perfect example. What do you guys see on the screen? An apple. An apple. No pears, Marty. It's an apple. It's 2.5 apples. 2.5. Thank you. A leaf, a cut apple. Okay. So, right. So you guys, I mean, I put an apple on the screen. You know what it is. So is there any reason for me to do this? Is there any reason for me to also put the word apple on the screen? No, I don't need to do that. I don't need to explain to you that the image that I've shown you is an apple, unless I'm trying to teach someone maybe the English word for apple. Okay, that's a great way to do it, to show the picture and the word together. That's a perfect example. But that's not what we're doing here, okay? So this is what I want to tell you guys. Don't break the apple rule. All right, the apple rule is where your visual could stand alone and communicate and enhance your idea without a single word. All right, don't break the apple rule. But I can't tell you how many times students will put up a picture along with, you know, a bulleted list of text. All right, Rick, you're asking, what if apple is an acronym? Okay, well then show us how apple is an acronym. But if it's this simplistic, you don't need to put the word along with the visual as well. If there's a reasoning for it, like an acronym, okay, then go for that. But you really, guys, you want to use crisp, clear, visually appealing images to connect with your audience, all right? So don't break the apple rule. I see this oftentimes, you know, with students that want to put up their entire script on the slides. That's a big no-no, something definitely you don't want to do. You don't want to read your script to your audience. Your audience can read it. They want to hear your message. They don't want to read your message. They want to hear and absorb your message, okay? So don't break that apple rule. All right, so moving along, we're going to talk about overcrowding. Jason, I love it. Did I miss anything crucial? I had to step away. Jason, we've been waiting for you. You'll probably have to go back. There was a couple of crucial things that we did talk about, Jason. So you might want to revisit the recording once I post it up tomorrow. All right. So overcrowding does not add to clarity. All right. So you want to think about this in the way that you are presenting visual information. And I oftentimes see students, maybe not to this degree, but they will have slides that kind of resemble this one, all right? Which is what I call a collage format, okay? So this guy on the left is Andy Geimer. He's my team leader. He's also a creative presentation instructor. Apparently, Andy Geimer has a lazy cat, all right? So I want you guys in the chat box, Brandon, not ooh cats. Cats are cute. I want you to communicate with me. What do you think is wrong or out of place with this particular slide? I'm curious to what you guys have to say. So you can answer in the chat box. What is wrong with the slide? Rick, the words. Marty, the pictures are under the words. Text is hard to read. Marty said, again, everything, too many pictures and they overlap. Another great point there. It looks cluttered from Lisa. Heidi keeps looking at the cat's butt for some reason. All right. Let's see here. Okay. It's a focal point. Right. All right. So guys, so a lot of great points that you made here. So here's a couple of items that I want you to understand about what's wrong with this particular slide. Number one, There's too many images communicating the same idea. Okay, there's 6 images up here with this lazy cat laying all over the place, and it is communicating the same idea. Okay, that's visual redundancy. All right, you want to avoid 6 small overlapping images communicating the same idea. Okay, when the same idea could have been communicated with one strong image. Okay, try to avoid visual redundancy. A couple of you guys mentioned the text, all right? That's breaking the Apple rule once again. Say, for instance, if Andy is up talking about his lazy cat, there is no reason that he has to write, I have a lazy cat. Okay, that's breaking the Apple rule. That's doing that. Don't want to break that rule. You guys are making me laugh about these copyrighted images. That's funny. So remember, if you say it within your speech or you say it within your verbal delivery, you do not need to include the words on the screen, okay? Also, overlapping images. Someone else mentioned the overlapping images. It looks really sloppy, doesn't it? It really just looks like he's thrown these images up. No pattern, no structure. It's just kind of odd the way that the images are placed. It's kind of design versus decoration, okay? So try to avoid just images thrown up on a slide, okay? Jason is saying it looks like grade school all over again. It's just, how much crap can I put on a slide? And that's not designing something with your audience in mind. Lastly, the text is overlapping the images. You can barely even see the word lazy because there is no contrast between the background and the text, okay? So you want to have contrast in there as well. So this is just an example of a slide. I don't get them this extreme, but I oftentimes will see students just throw up, 6, 8, 10 little images up there, and it makes no sense. Don't need to include it that way. All right, so I'm going to fix, let me see here, Rick, you're saying one of the things Ms. Duarte was talking about, the flow of Western reading format, the images are chaotic. Yes, I mean, think of Western left to right. So you want to have order and structure. That's how people make sense of messages, whether they're verbal or non-verbal, okay? So I'm gonna fix this slide, and I want you guys to tell me if we're done, if we're good to go, or if we have more work to do. All right, so where are we at now? Do we have more work to do, or should I say this is cool, this is great? Jason's saying more work. Okay, so what do we need to do? Marty's saying more work too. So what needs to be done? Okay, great. Heidi is saying only one image. Samuel is saying one less pic, so you're saying to use 2. James is saying cover the white space. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, what's next? What else do we need to do? Apple rule, right? We need to eliminate this text, okay? And we also have 3 images communicating the same exact idea. Alex is saying you'd eliminate the left and right picture, so only keeping the middle. All right, so that's a great idea. So that's what I'm going to do next. So am I done? Or do I still have one more step to do? What else can be done with this? Deal, eliminate the cat. Oh, enlarge it. Okay, Alex said enlarge it. Absolutely. Okay, so yes, this is why I want you guys using high resolution images so that you can blow it up to take up the entire width of the screen. Someone had mentioned, and I can't remember who it was right now, eliminate the white space as well. But if I'm up, or if I'm, Andy's up in front of you guys and he's talking about his lazy cat, I don't have the words, I have a lazy cat, I have one clear, crisp image communicating the idea of the lazy cat, right? It's enhancing the verbal content. And this is kind of the idea that I want you to get into when you start creating your own visual presentations as well, okay? So start thinking about these ways that you can still connect and communicate non-verbally with your audience by large, crisp, clear images that are enhancing the verbal content. Okay, that's what the images are there to do. All right, so thank you guys for participating in that. So here's our next exercise. And I want to talk to you about how images can really communicate an emotional message, all right? So I want to talk about, sometimes there is a need to have words on the screen where you're going to, they're going to be necessary, and that's fine. Oftentimes that's with a quote, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you guys a quote, and then I'm going to pair it with one image. And what I would like you to do is to tell me, what is the emotional response that you're having as I paired this quote and this image? The cat turned into a guy. And then I'm going to move back to the quote and change the image. And I want to see how your emotional response changes as we move through these couple of slides. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to tell you guys the quote. There is no anger, James, there is no anger. All right, more than 2,000 tropical forest plants have been identified by scientists as having anti-cancer properties. Okay, so that's your quote. I'm going to now pair it with an image. And I want you guys to tell me in the chat box, what is your emotional response to this? What are some emotional words that come to mind? Is anybody there? James, okay, is interesting. Feeling hopeful. Why no cure yet? Heidi's saying death, question mark. Okay. Any other emotional responses to this quote and this image? The movie Medicine Man, hopeful. Okay. Making a mark. So for the general consensus, I would feel okay saying that the majority of you are a little bit more positive and hopeful when seeing this quote and this image paired together. Okay, so I'm going to go back to just the quote, clear your palette out a moment. I'm going to pair it with a different image. And I want you to tell me what your emotional response is now. Patrick is saying sad, okay? Marty, you were just so clairvoyant. You knew all of these things were coming tonight. Anger for sure, angry, sad, horror, depressing, mind blown. That's messed up. So you guys, obviously, images can absolutely impact a way that you are presenting to your audience with emotions, okay? So that image obviously had a much more powerful impact than the first one did. It was just, it's dynamic, it speaks volumes, and if this was the message that you were conveying to your audience, this is definitely one that you would want to include in there. It really struck a chord, I think, with a lot of you guys. So be sure that you're choosing images that will also strike that emotional chord with your audience, as emotions are what ties us and bond us together and form those connections, okay? So think of your images as a way to connect and maintain your bond with your audience as you're talking, okay? All right, so that's just another exercise. Thank you guys for doing that with me. Next is about color. So is color important in your design choices? Do you guys think color is important? Yes, a resounding yep and yes and sure. Absolutely, yes. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about color, what some of these colors mean, and some advice from me, from what I've seen over the past year and a half through presentations, to kind of just give you tips on how to include color. Patrick, it's interesting that you're saying red is a good color. So I think it is definitely a good color, but I'm definitely going to talk about that one as it is our first color to talk about, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about color vibration. We're gonna go through all of the spectrums here and talk about the meaning behind some of the colors that are used out there, okay? So you guys, hold on one second. So what I want you to do is I'm going to put a color up on the screen, and I want you to tell me, what is your response to this color? What words come to mind when you think of this color? And you're doing that a little bit right now. So this color that we'll start out with first is red. So what comes to mind with the color red? What oftentimes is being communicated? James is saying strong. Samuel, it's your favorite. Passion from Heidi. Lisa's saying stop, another good one, stop signs. Alex said anger, hate, and love. Love, passion, and strong. Love, blood, a gang with a sad face. Okay, so a lot of very strong responses from you guys. And red is a very powerful color. I will say this. Let me go over the ones that it means. So a lot of you guys, you nailed this one. Love, passion, danger. Absolutely command your attention, okay? When you see stop signs or the color red, it really kind of just strikes you because it is a very bold color, all right? Combined with black, it can be also very masculine. But I will say this, be cautious when you're using red. I would say my best advice when you're creating a visual presentation is to use it as the accent color, not the background color or the text color, because it is very overpowering and it is very distracting, okay? I think this happens oftentimes when I see students pitch themselves to the WWE, okay? Very bold company, right? And there's a lot of red in there. So they have this very bold red background. And so if you have PowerPoint or Keynote, whatever you have, and you want to go and see how bold this is, make a dominantly red presentation and show it to someone else. And it is very overpowering. So my best advice is to use those reds as the complement. It's not the primary, it's going to be the secondary or the complementary color. You're using it for emphasis, not the focal point. It is very overpowering. If it does come up, if I have seen one that is done very, very well, I would definitely show you guys and be like, look, this is the example. But oftentimes it is very, very overpowering. All right, so moving on through the spectrum, the color orange. So what comes to mind with the color orange? Marty, okay, is warning, the sun from Heidi, heat and summer, any others? Summertime. So a lot of very summertime warmth. James is saying you hated it because you had to wear it. Alex is saying youthful sunset. So it's more of like a lighter, bubblier color. It's not as intense as a red color, okay? Oftentimes it's also associated with fun. Think of the Full Sail logo, very fun, creative school has pulled orange in as one of their dominant colors for the Full Sail logo, okay? So it's not as aggressive as red. It is still bold, but it's not as aggressive, but it is a great pop of color that you could incorporate into a presentation, okay? So next on the spectrum is yellow. Yellow. Happy from James. Marty is bright, happy, bright. Samuel hates it. Kyle, you're saying yield, like a yield sign, like a caution. Heidi is saying summer again, happy and bright. Sun, slow and peaceful. Okay, so again, another very fun, lighthearted type of color. I will say that it does grab a lot of attention when it's partnered with a color like black, high contrast in color. But similar to red, if you've ever seen an almost dominant yellow presentation, it's almost like a highlighter smacking you in the face, okay? So try to use yellow as a complementary color. As an example, I showed you guys one of the plans last week from one of my students who was pitching himself to the mobile development side of Best Buy, all right? What are Best Buy's colors? Blue and yellow, right? So that's a great way to, again, subtly and non-verbally communicate with your audience, right? If you know that they have a dominant color scheme about their logo, about their branding, you could easily incorporate those colors to communicate with your audience, to show, once again, I'm trying to make a connection with you, all right? So that was just one idea that came to mind, was his presentation, was he actually incorporated some of those colors as well. So think about your audience, that research once again, and think about their color scheme and the items that they're using with their own branding, with their own logo, with their own their graphics that they are incorporating. All right, I have some questions here. Samuel, you said red headers, question mark. Could you expand on that just a bit? I will come back to your question. Oh, let me see here. Would that be okay or too much? Samuel, go. This is what first drafts are for, guys. Go for it. If you love it, you might put in the feedback comment, hey, I'm really not too sure about this header. let me know what you think about it, and if you've got any advice for me. Like this is all about first drafts, is getting your ideas out there and kind of getting the feedback. And maybe it's wonderful, maybe it's something that's very creative and very powerful, or maybe it's something that I would suggest some shifting for. Okay, so this is another great reason why we do the first draft. I think the other comments are pertaining to a different conversation, but I don't think that's a question about using a free one from Lisa. So I'm going to continue moving forward here, guys. Okay, so green, the color green. Ryan's favorite. All right, green is good. Rick, patience, Heidi, nature. Sea green is Marty's favorite. Kyle, growth. What is the one green? What is one thing, the Hulk, clean, one thing that comes up when you think about the color green? It hasn't been mentioned yet. Money. Thank you, James. All right, money, profit and gain, being in the positive, not the negative. But you guys also mentioned these items as well. Plants, kind of that natural state, life, nature, health, cleanliness, all of those items, especially when combined with the color blue. James is saying guacamole. So if you're pitching yourself to a restaurant, that could perhaps be it. But the green, products that are green is another way to think of that as well. Okay, the color blue. What about the color blue? Blue is the tricky one. Rick is saying calming, the sky, the ocean. There you go. Lisa, so you're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum when you say sad. So soothing, so calm. So it really depends on the shade of blue, doesn't it? So if those light sky blues, kind of like the one that you're seeing on the screen, it takes on more of a relaxing connotation. But if you're using those deeper, darker shades, maybe a navy shade, something a little darker along the spectrum, it's probably going to take on a little bit more of a sad, depressive type of connotation there. So just kind of think of that when you're using these different shades of blue and what they tend to mean. Blue can be a little bit of a tricky one. Oh my gosh, James, so I can't believe this. I actually know what you're talking about with the Infinity Stones. I saw the movie. I had no clue what was going on. All right, next is purple. Purple, what? I don't know if the movie was amazing. I don't know. Purple. Heidi's hair is purple. Marty is Lysol. No more talking about the movie because we don't want to spoil it. So color purple. What comes to mind? Barney. Fabuloso, people eater, exciting. There's one main item that comes to mind, and Richard, you just said it, royalty. So there you go, lavender. Royalty oftentimes comes hand in hand with the color purple as well, okay? A bold color, once again, sometimes associated with the color red or paired with the color red, offers a lot of romance, comfort, luxury, and mystique. But the color purple oftentimes goes hand in hand with royalty, as does Willie. He is royalty. Are any of you guys watching the big wedding this weekend? Oh, there's a royal wedding. Big news. Okay, yep. Crown Royal, absolutely. Red and purple, James. That brand makes a lot of sense. Those two things oftentimes go together. All right, last two colors. The color white. Snow, innocence, godly, purity, cold. So the color white oftentimes communicates a couple of ideas. Sometimes sterility or doctors. You see doctors with those white lab coats. With religions, good and holiness, there's a softness to it, kind of coming back to when we're talking about blues, sky blue with white, kind of health and cleanliness as well. Okay, so white is definitely a color oftentimes used. Sometimes we try to fill that white space. What is a company up until recently that used the color white quite a bit in its branding and advertising? Yes, Mac Apple. So you guys probably noticed that with their advertising, they had a lot of white space. And it wasn't until I think the latest phone, it really kind of switched to much more predominantly black backgrounds. It was interesting that they switched to that. But you can think about companies that use certain colors with their branding, and then the messages they're communicating with that. All right, last on the spectrum is the color black. Color black. Ryan saying the absence of color, death, dark, mysterious, cold, horror, black hole, financial security. That's a good one. Unknown. Okay, so a lot of really big, big ideas that come to mind with the color black. Okay, many of you guys mentioned these items: death, anxiety, darkness, the unknown. A couple of you guys mentioned that. But on the other hand, when you're combining it with colors like gold and silver and gray, it offers a lot of luxury and sophistication. Think about New Year's Eve, right? All of the decor, oftentimes the decorations that you see are highly sophisticated. Black tie events. The decorations are black and gold. A lot of great contrast happening there as well. So you can incorporate that into your color scheme to promote those types of ideas within your brand. Okay, so think about the colors that you want to include with your own visual presentation. You want it to be bold, you want it to be dynamic, but you also want to use colors in a way that's communicating the same message that you are communicating. All right, so I want to show you guys this site called Compfight. Are you seeing compfight.com on your screen right now? See, yes, okay. All right, so I wanted to show you just a quick, brief walkthrough of how to do some searching for copyright-free images, okay? So let's say, for instance, you wanted to start looking for some images to complement your verbal message, all right? Compfight is a great site, compfight.com. This is one I wanted to show you guys. So let's just do a quick search for photos. Let's say for some reason I was talking about sunflowers, okay? And I wanted to use some sunflowers in my presentation. This is a good site because of a few things. It provides a lot of high resolution copyright-free images, okay? Also over here, it tells you the different licenses. You want to go for the one that says commercial. And since I've already been to this site before, it's already highlighted on commercial use, okay? Creative Commons is on here as well, but go for that commercial use. So my general rule of thumb on this is that anything below the dotted line should be applicable to you. So I'm going to say, oh, I love this picture of sunflowers. I have to have it. So I click on it. Okay, so this is available to me copyright free, and I've got several options for the size. You want high resolution images because if you want to blow it up, it still needs to remain crisp and clear. That's another item that I see quite frequently is blurry and pixelated images. You don't want to have a blurry presentation, okay? So go here, download the original size, and guess what? You get the resource here. Oh, look, copy and paste. Oh, there it is. There's your resource for this image, all right? So this is a great resource for you guys to use not only in this class, but in other classes as well, and you can do the different sizes. One thing I want to caution you about, so above this dotted line, say, oh, I love this image, right? It's taking me to Shutterstock, which, boom, here is a big, giant, ugly watermark, okay? If you have an image with a watermark on it, guess what? It's a violation of a copyright issue there, okay? You haven't paid for it. You don't have the account. You can't just copy and, do a screenshot. So definitely be aware of watermarks. You don't want to include these within your presentation. So I've noticed that anything above that little dotted line there is probably something that you want to avoid. But these down here, do some discovery, look for some great images that will complement the verbal delivery throughout your presentation. So James is saying you just check the page out. It's pretty cool. So that's just one really quick tip tutorial to give to you guys about how to start managing images and start, shying away from just the Google image search and go to places where it's a little bit safer, a little bit more conservative about what you're choosing to not violate any copyrights there. So any questions about that portion? Unsplash is a good place too. I've not heard of that one, Willie, but thank you for sharing that. And this is another great thing to start talking about and discussing within the week 3 discussion board is these different places that you guys and these resources that you have. I mean, I can't possibly know all of them to share with you, but you guys might have great things to share with your classmates that would be highly valuable to them. Ryan is asking another good question. Is there a minimum or maximum amount of images we have to use? So Ryan, no, there's not a minimum or maximum that I'm looking for when it comes to grading. But here's kind of my general rule of thumb if you would like to have it in the back of your mind as you're creating the visual portion. I usually say that you need to change your images about every 15 to 20 seconds, okay? One of the mistakes that I see students make is they'll include a PowerPoint presentation with like 3 slides, okay? So they'll spend a minute on one slide, a minute on another, and a minute on the last. And visually, it becomes boring. So you also want your visuals to give a good forward momentum to your presentation. It's moving along, it's changing it up, it's engaging the audience as you are talking, and it's engaging them visually as well. So I think that's a good rule of thumb every 15 to 20 seconds is to switch up that visual and complement whatever it is that you are saying throughout the content of your presentation. James, can I have a video gameplay a little bit? Maybe. Yes, I see that often, James. I would shy or caution you against having the entire presentation with that. The ones that I see really kind of start to lose their impact and emphasis very quickly. But if you wanted to include little snippets of that and maybe change it up with some still images that complement your verbal delivery, I think that's absolutely appropriate. So hopefully that answers your question, James. Good. Okay. Alrighty, guys. So before we get back into a discussion of star moments in our last portion of the night, do you guys have any more questions about the visuals in your presentation? I think it's the fun portion of it. I think it's a very creative portion of the assignment. Have fun with it. Be creative with it. But be sure that you are, once you've created it, take a step back and play the presentation from beginning to end and really take a look at the visuals. Is this what I'm wanting to communicate to enhance what I'm saying? Or do my visuals really not do that job? And that's the job of the visuals, is to really engage with the audience on a visual and emotional level. So before I move on, do you have any more questions about visuals? Rick, go ahead. What's your question? Rick, I'm going to go ahead and keep talking here. Oh, you got it. Is it possible to do the audio in sections using PowerPoint? I believe there is that option to do that. So I think with one of the tutorial videos that I will be sending out that goes over that, I believe that is an option. Samuel is saying to source the game, though. Yeah, if you're going to use the gameplay, source the game as one of your sources. Okay, guys, so I'm going to talk a little bit about star moments. We tapped into these briefly last week, and I asked you in my week 3 pre-work message to take a look at another TED Talk. It's Amanda Palmer's TED Talk because she uses all 5 of the star moments that we discussed beautifully throughout her TED Talk. Did anyone get a chance to see that? Anyone get a chance to watch her TED Talk before our session tonight? Tiffany, you did, and you loved it. Rick, not yet. James, you did. Really just absolutely great way to visually see star moments in action, okay? So if you haven't watched it yet, please, guys, take about 15 minutes to watch her TED Talk. Really dynamic speaker, great message, and the visuals as well do a fantastic job. So as we talked about last week, we talked about star moments, okay? And I would like you guys to be sure that you're including at least one, if not multiple, star moments throughout your presentation. So the 5 that we talked about, the memorable dramatization, the evocative visuals, the repeatable sound bites, emotive storytelling, and then shocking statistics. Okay, so I just want to kind of recap a couple of ways that Amanda Palmer used the star moments throughout her TED Talk. Okay, first and foremost was the beginning of her presentation. Okay, she begins with a memorable dramatization. All right, she's reenacting her time working as that 8-foot bride standing on a milk crate with a flower. Okay, James is saying you couldn't stop looking at her eyebrows for a minute. Sorry, oh my goodness. But the memorable dramatization, she's standing there reenacting a time that she's talking about. She's acting out that space of her life, okay? So I think that's a great way to see that. It's tough to do in a presentation like what we are doing right now. But if you can incorporate that, it is quite powerful. She also uses emotive storytelling from the beginning to the end, okay? She talks about her profound encounters with people on the street, talking about her eyes would say, thank you, I see you, and their eyes would say, thank you, no one ever sees me, all right? She talks about staying in the home of a family in Honduras, okay? And she talks about what that lesson taught her and how much that was an impactful time in her life, okay? So emotive storytelling, a lot of you guys are using that, especially in the beginning of your presentation as your way of connecting with your audience. So absolutely include that storytelling. Evocative visuals. So if you've watched the TED Talk, you will notice that the photos and the images that she uses, they don't have words all over them. Her script isn't written out. It was her personal photos, from fans, from traveling around the world. None of them contained bullet points or charts and graphs and things like that until the very end when she's talking about some financial statistics. But for the majority of her message, she's using her images to complement her verbal delivery. She does use repeatable sound bites just a bit. She talks about little snippets of couch surfing and crowdfunding. So she talks a little bit about repeatable sound bites, not to the extent where it's like a slogan or anything like that, but that's definitely another great way to remain memorable to your audience. And last is going to be the statistics, okay? And I think she did a good job with the statistics she talks about because it's not inundating to the audience, but she wants to use them for impact. Okay, she talks about how her crowdfunding goal was 100,000, and to date she's made 1.2 million from about 25,000 people. That's impactful. She's showing, what her goal was as opposed to her results, and so that's very, very dramatic. But if you're going to include statistics, you don't want to just have a 4-minute presentation talking about stats. It's not really that effective, and oftentimes it loses their impact as you're moving through there. Okay, so again, guys, you need to be thinking about your star moments, something they'll always remember as ways to connect with your audience. If you only have one, that's okay, but I will definitely encourage you to use a variety of these star moments as you're speaking. All right, so our last section of the night is talking about the 3 pillars of public speaking, and these are going to come from Greek root words. I also put a quick video. It's about 5 minutes. It's called Dear 16-Year-Old Me into my week 3 pre-work message. So if any of you guys have had a chance to watch it, hopefully you can kind of understand where these 3 pillars were shown or displayed within the Dear 16-Year-Old Me video. The Dear 16-Year-Old Me is it's really kind of a promotional video to get people thinking about melanoma and skin cancer. And it really pulls in, like Rick is saying, pathos, ethos, and logos very, very well. All those 3 different dynamics to really make a solid presentation for public speaking. So as I mentioned, those 3 Greek words are ethos, pathos, and logos. So let me explain a little bit about these. Ethos is very, very closely tied to the word ethics, all right? So ethos is the appeal to trust or credibility. You must be a credible speaker when you're talking to someone or you're talking to your audience. They have to believe in your word. Pathos is the appeal to emotion with a sweet little puppy dog. And then logos, of course, Dr. Spock, and being very logical is the appeal to logic. Your argument or your message must also make sense. So let me talk about these a little bit more in depth. All right, ethos, all right? Think about it, who you are as a speaker. That audience needs to look at you and have confidence and faith that what you're saying is true and trustworthy, all right? What are some great ways to increase your ethos or your credibility as a speaker? What are some ways to do this, both verbally and non-verbally? If you guys want to answer in the chat box, I will wait for one moment. What are some ways to appeal? James, absolutely. Non-verbally, eye contact. That is, especially in our culture here in the US, eye contact is predominantly what tells us if a person is being honest or if they're potentially lying to us. If they're looking at us in the eye, we have the perception that they're being straightforward. If they're looking away or they're looking down, oftentimes we have that idea that maybe perhaps they're not being honest with us. That's in our culture. In some other cultures, it's disrespectful to look someone in the eye. So you have that whole cultural aspect, but definitely a way to increase your credibility is through eye contact. I have a couple others. Marty is saying smiling. Samuel is saying dress nice, look nice, speak clearly, stand up straight and confident. All great words of advice. So verbally, having a high level of ethos is you coming to the table, doing your research, knowing exactly what you're talking about, speaking with confidence and clarity as well, and delivering a well-organized, well-processed and rehearsed message, okay? Rick is saying that kicks me sometimes because when I need to process, I look away as I think, even if it's only for a second. And oftentimes, yes, eye contact is very tricky because if you're looking, I mean, think about it. If you're looking someone dead in the eye for a minute or two solid, it's very uncomfortable as well. So you have to use it to where it feels natural. It is intense, right? So looking away every now and again, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a sign of not being trustworthy. It's kind of just making the other person feel more comfortable. But think about it, if someone's in trouble, they're probably going to be doing everything but looking at you in the eye, okay? So that's just some things to think about as well for having a high level of ethos and credibility as a speaker. All right, pathos, all right? Guys, we are emotional beings, aren't we? Okay, so how many of us have ever made a decision because of our gut, right? I didn't go down this particular path tonight because it just felt like maybe I shouldn't go that way. Or you know what? I made this decision because it just felt right. How many of us do those things? We make emotional decisions. I think a lot of us definitely do that. I do that quite a bit. I listen to my gut. It's hardwired into me to help me make some of those decisions. And it's also the ways that I feel connected with others, okay, is through emotion. So you want to be sure there's an element of emotion within your message. And that's oftentimes in the very beginning, forming those bonds, telling those stories, kind of stirring up those emotions a little bit as you're speaking to your audience. That's why we had to work on that emotional storytelling assignment last week. So make sure you're having those emotional, conveying those emotions, you're using emotional language as you're speaking to your audience. It's a great way of connecting with them. Lastly is about logos. Okay, so I am logical as can be. If your message makes sense and you can move me from point A to point B to point C in a logical fashion, I'm more than likely going to absorb your message, understand it, and probably see it your way. But if it doesn't make sense to me, if it's not organized, if it's chaos, if the visuals are chaos, it's just going to be something that I probably will just turn off to. So you need to be sure that your message makes sense to your audience, okay? You want to be sure that it's organized and that it has a lot of great reasoning behind it, okay? So those are those three different pillars just to keep in mind as you're crafting your message, okay? So the idea is to have a lot of ethos, pathos, and logos all coming together for that win, okay? When you're crafting your message, your public speaking message here. And if you haven't done it already, a good example of all three of these working together with quite a bit of impact is that Dear 16-Year-Old Me video. If you want to take a couple of minutes to watch that, it's a really great visual example. Okay, guys, coming to the end of our night. Here's just, again, some of that helpful information about how to create your first draft, okay? So start moving through this checklist that you should be completing moving into the first draft. Again, it must contain audio. You must have the verbal delivery. It should contain visuals as well, and it needs to be as close to 3 to 4 minutes as possible. Okay, so this is due this upcoming Sunday for you guys to turn into the platform. And again, I highly encourage you guys to interact within the week 3 discussion board. Share your first draft, offer constructive feedback to your classmates. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your first draft there with everyone else, at least go back in there and offer your constructive feedback or helpful tips that could, assist your classmates. Okay, be sure it's turned in by the due date. I know, Heidi, I just noticed that. This is one of the slides I used when I first started, and I need to change that. Thanks, Heidi. I have a copyright issue. I'm gonna get arrested. Brandon, if we have to cite our work, do we have to include it in the video? So Brandon, good question. So if you wanted to, you have 2 options. If you wanted to include a final slide of your presentation showing your resources, you may do so there. If you wanted to just upload a Word document with your resources, you may include it that way. Either way, you need to have a resources page. How do you just stir in the pot tonight, aren't you? So guys, do you have any questions for me before I turn off the recording for the evening? Anything that I could address before we end our night here? There is a dog barking next door. It won't shut up. Willie, yes. Samuel, free grades. Samuel, nothing's free. What do you mean free grades? What do you mean by that? Free grades. What are your questions? Okay, Sammy, I plan on doing a video for mine. Could I just do a credits at the end with my... Absolutely. You can definitely do just kind of a scrolling credits at the end of your video. Okay, James, so our audio first draft is being sent to the discussion. Okay, so guys, just want to clarify one last thing about this assignment. So in essence, you could potentially be submitting your first draft twice, okay? So everyone needs to submit it in the 3.4 section. That's the actual assignment section. If you choose to, you can share it within the 3.3 discussion board as well. So you could, in essence, be submitting it twice. Does that answer that question? A little. Catherine is saying, if I'm the owner of the material, I should then present my own information. Catherine, are you referring to when you're citing your sources? If it's an image you've created, you could say, created by Catherine. So you could put that on there. You could put that in the references page. Jason, you're saying, do we have to submit it twice? You don't have to. Everyone needs to submit the first draft within the 3.4 assignment section. That's where the grade will come through. That's where only I can see it. That's where my feedback will come to you. That's between me and you. If you want feedback on the first draft from your classmates, you need to also submit it in the 3.3 discussion, because that's where everyone else within that discussion will be able to see it. So you don't have to, but if you would like feedback from your classmates, you would then need to submit it twice in the platform. It's not, okay, so James, so you're saying, okay, the classmates can see it on the 3.1. The 3.1 is not the correct one. It's the 3.3. I just want to clarify that. But right idea. Only the classmates can see it within the discussion board, which is a 3.3. You were so close. So close. Simone, you don't have to submit the rough draft in the discussion. If you would like feedback from your classmates, you may do so. If you're not comfortable sharing your first draft within the discussion board, you also have the option to complete the assignment by offering your own feedback or offering just a helpful hint. I don't want to make it required that you all have to share your first draft with your classmates, but you do have to at least have some kind of interaction, I'll say, within the discussion board this week in order to get credit for that assignment. Jason, you're confused about, okay, so let me do this. Let me see if I can help clarify this, okay? That's all I ask. All right, where did it go? No. Okay. 3.3, peer feedback discussion, okay? If you feel comfortable, put your first draft in there and your classmates can give you constructive feedback, okay? That's where all of your other classmates can see it in the 3.3. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to, but I would like you to add some kind of constructive feedback within the discussion in order to receive credit for it. Everyone must post their first draft in the 3.4. Okay, the 3.4 is the actual assignment submission area. That's the place where only I see it. And that's where I give you my feedback and the grade. No one else can see your feedback and your grade but me and you. But if you want your classmates to see it, and you want that to be your discussion board post, you can also share it there. Does that hopefully clarify the two assignments? Do we still have questions about that? Okay, so Willie, I see your question. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut the recording here for now. And if you guys don't have any more questions, you are good to go for the evening, and we'll meet next Tuesday for our final lecture. But I'm going to go ahead and stay within the room for a couple of minutes and respond to questions. Willie, you're first on the list here. So you guys have a wonderful night. If you would like to stay in the room, I will be in here for a couple minutes. If not, have a wonderful evening.